everybody, and welcome to Qué Golazo, a daily CBS soccer podcast. I'm your host, Luis Miguel Echegaray, and I am so excited to welcome you to episode 1. We aim to give you the latest news, analysis, commentary, betting tips, conversation of culture and social on and off the pitch from the beautiful game. I am so excited. We have an amazing team right here with our CBS talent. But before I introduce them to you, I want to tell you a little bit more about this show. From the Champions League to Europa, the Premier League, La Liga, Bundesliga, Serie A, Liga A, the Americas, and beyond. This is all about the global game. We're going to try to cover it all. It won't be easy, but I know that we can do it with this team, and every single weekday, we will try and give you the best and the very best. But the other part, I think, guys, that I want you to know is that this show, just like the game, is about you, the fan. So I want your input. I want you guys to follow us on Qué Golazo Pod on Twitter. I want you to go to Apple Podcasts on Qué Golazo, a daily CBS soccer podcast, Spotify and Stitcher. And I want you to ask us questions. If you go on Twitter on Qué Golazo Pod, tweet us your questions. And if you go on Apple Podcasts, you can leave a rating and a review with a question. And hopefully we will read them on the show. But the other thing that I want you to do is I want you to video them. Where's my phone? I want you to grab your phone and I want you to go horizontal. Make sure that you have good video and audio quality and just ask us a quick questions about anything, your team, a league, a player, a tournament, anything. And hopefully we will have them on the YouTube show. Make sure that you tag Qué Golazo Pod on Twitter and send us your questions. So it's a lot of homework. I want you to go on social, on Twitter, Qué Golazo Pod, and send us questions via video. But I also want you to ask us by rating and reviewing on Apple Podcasts. There's a lot, I know, but we're worth it. Trust me, we're worth it. All right? Now, without further ado, let's get on with the first episode. Well, I promised you talent and I delivered. We have Jimmy, Conrad, and Jonathan Johnson, CBS talent, absolute legends. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. Jimmy, let me start with you, former MLS Defender of the Year, former United States men's national star. I remember that tackle against Lionel Messi. We all do, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing well, and I'm very excited to get this going and to be sharing this opportunity with you guys is something special.
Jonathan is a French football expert. He's our CBS insider, the European star, the Paris legend. Jonathan, how are you?
Very, very well, my friend. Thanks a lot for having me on. And likewise, like Jimmy, just, really excited to get going.
Jack Grealish in the background is always going to be a plus with me. Fellas, let's begin with the most recent news. We're going to talk about the international break. We're going to talk about Europe, World Cup qualifiers as well. And JJ will give us a lowdown on PSG, etc. But let's begin with the most recent news. Cristiano Ronaldo, Weston McKennie testing positive for COVID-19. Obviously, health issues aside, this is a big problem for Juventus as they not just look to continue their Serie A campaign, but also the Champions League begins next week on Tuesday. Two major stars, of course, Cristiano Ronaldo, we know so well, but Weston McKennie just entering this frame. Let's begin with you, Jimmy. What do you think of all this, in terms of the recent news and as we look ahead to the week ahead?
Well, when I think about Cristiano Ronaldo, I think of him as a robot. So for him to actually get coronavirus makes me think, wow, I guess this guy is human. And so that's, I don't know what kind of hope does that give the rest of us? Because that guy's like the perfect human being. He's so sculpted and ready to go, and he takes such good care of himself. So obviously that makes me a little bit fearful. I know he's going to have the best doctors. He's not shown no symptoms, so he's going to be fine. Obviously, we wish him well. From a sporting perspective, I actually was sad to hear that Weston McKennie, outside of him, contracting the illness, now is going to miss a lot of games too, because this could have been an opportunity for him to continue to get valuable minutes and continue to prove he should be in the starting 11 on a regular basis. So I'm disappointed on a couple fronts. With regard to Cristiano, Portugal, I don't know how deep you want to get into this, but they got a little golden generation going on underneath them. So when he doesn't play, they still can take care of teams, and they did it again today against Sweden. And then with regard to the Serie A season, he misses one. He misses Dynamo Kiev in the Champions League. Had it been Barcelona, and that might have been a little bit different, but he's not going to miss too much valuable time. So I think they're going to be fine. I guess I'm more disappointed for McKennie because I just feel like he could have taken that opportunity with a couple guys out, including Ronaldo, and really put a stamp on things.
So JJ, when we look at this, and not just Ronaldo and Weston McKennie, but also we had to think about the teams that they faced beforehand, right? France being one the past weekend. And then, looking ahead, as Jimmy mentioned, they just beat Sweden as well. But, what do you make of all this, especially from a European perspective, and how we're looking now at a schedule that is getting busier, heavier, not just the Champions League, but we're looking ahead to November international break. What's your take on this?
Yeah, obviously it's a big concern, to have players like this testing positive and then finding out sort of after the fact, after, shirt exchanges have been done, that sort of thing. I mean, just looking at the French point of view, you already had Anthony Lopez and Jose Fonte, both testing positive, both of them based in Ligue 1. But then you've got Cristiano Ronaldo swapping shirts at the end of the match with Eduardo Camavinga. So immediately this potentially sends it to, sort of 2 or 3 clubs in France. That's without even considering the players that, the rest of the players in the France squad, the rest of the Swedish players as well. It is a hugely concerning moment when you just look at everything that's going on around Europe at the moment. Speaking from the French point of view, lockdown tightening over here all the time, matches becoming more and more inaccessible. Like you said, the schedules just keep piling up domestically, internationally, and you've got the players dipping in and out. I mean, let's look at it this way. If COVID can get Zlatan, then, COVID can get anybody. It's, it really has been, it has shown in recent weeks that it's completely, it's untouchable. Anybody can be gotten to, and it's massively worrying, the spread effect, especially if we see more and more players testing positive between now and the next international break, because it seems like, European matches and international duties seem to be the most likely matches to go and spread the disease.
What I want to jump in and say is, what's the breaking point? Because at some point, I think you have to absorb a couple players getting sick. It just seems like that's the trend. But what is that number? Is it 10 of your guys before you shut it down? We're having evidence of it here in MLS in the States with Colorado Rapids. They're going to miss 7 games because of so many positive COVID tests, but they had a large number. So I wonder what that number is for big European clubs, because it might interfere with meaningful competitions as they take out more key players. It's really interesting. I don't think we found that line yet, but I'm curious to see where it goes from here.
And we're going to talk about World Cup qualifiers from South America in a second, but Raúl Ruiz from Peru couldn't play against Brazil because he had coronavirus. There's so many players in MLS, as you mentioned, Jimmy, as well. We're talking about Salomon Rondon as well, a Venezuelan player who plays in China. He wasn't allowed to travel. Let me ask you this. Let's start with JJ. Do you see November international break happening at this point? I mean, obviously the money needs to keep coming in. World Cup qualifiers in South America need to keep happening because it's such a marathon season. What do you make of November? Like, if you were just to take a guess right now, like, would clubs, are they going to be more disciplined when it comes to letting these players go? Because also we're entering flu season. We're entering a colder climate. That's another problem. JJ, what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with you. I do think it will go ahead, but I think, the international federations are going to be pushing ahead with this, quite pig-headedly. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of resistance from the clubs, but ultimately, I don't see, clubs sort of, trying to strong arm the national team. So I do think the players will still end up going out on international duty. And I do expect the situation to worsen. Going back quickly to the point Jimmy was making a few moments ago, what is that breaking point? I mean, speaking solely from the French football standpoint, basically clubs are able to register a squad of 30 players. And, basically the only way that matches are not going to go ahead is if, such a large number of them are compromised that you couldn't even put together a squad with, say, like 4 or 5 substitutes, or if the goalkeepers, there's a string of goalkeepers who suddenly test positive and you don't have an adequate replacement for that. Okay, there's the Joker transfer window that exists in France, but, that wouldn't be able to sort out, sort of more than 3-4 clubs for goalkeepers. It's just an unrealistic ask. So that, in terms of French domestic football at the moment, is the breaking point. And going back to the November internationals, I think perhaps that might be the moment where football has to reevaluate whether it's prudent or not to push on and try to continue the season throughout the Christmas period.
Jimmy, any lasting thoughts on that? I mean, especially from a North American perspective, right?
I just find it to be interesting. I think what we've learned in this international break is that by opening up the borders and allowing your players to travel across so many different countries has made them more susceptible to contracting the virus. And I think that's something that needs to be looked at. I know there are some clubs. I know Jesse Marsch in particular at RB Salzburg. He has not allowed some of his players to go back to their home countries to play in some important games. He was trying to be thoughtful about all that. I'm sure obviously playing for your country is a dream. You never want to take that opportunity away from those players as a coach, but you also have to see the bigger picture. And I think that's going to be a little dicey, I think, going into November. What did we learn from this international break that we're gonna parlay into that? I think things have just gotten a little bit looser as everybody's gotten this goes across all sports in this country in particular. As everybody starts to get comfortable with sports being back, everybody's relaxed a little bit. We're not as hyper active with regard to making sure we're washing hands all the time. And maybe this is just a reminder of, hey, if Cristiano Ronaldo can get it, if Zlatan can get it, anybody can get it. And now we got to be a little bit tighter on some of these restrictions again. And that's going to probably bum out a lot of people, but I think that might be the way forward.
And going back to that point that Jimmy was making about Jesse Marsch not allowing some of his players to go and join up on international duty, I think there has to be a line between the international duty that some of these players are going to take part in. If it's a qualifier for a major event like a World Cup or a Euro, then yeah, I think it's understandable that the players would want to go and play for their national team, and also that the national team would want their best players available for them. But what I don't get is the insistence at this moment in time, with all of these international friendlies. If there was a moment to sort of drop international friendlies off of the calendar for a while, just to be responsible, it seems like now is the right time to do that.
Yeah, let me just add one thing. All right. This situation, this pandemic, to both of your points. One, we're getting a little too arrogant, I think, thinking that we finally combated this. And two, this is a detail-centric chaos, meaning that in sports, you have to think about all the details. So when I'm hearing things like Camavinga swapping shirts with Cristiano Ronaldo, why are we swapping shirts in the first place? Why are some coaches leaving their respective boxes? There's so many little break, like Cristiano Ronaldo had a huge dinner with the Portuguese team the day before that. It's just tiny little details that I think they can do better in order to make sure that nobody contracts this virus. And to both your points, we need to remember that we can't loosen up. Listen, it's a damn shame that in the first episode, we have to begin to talk about this, but it's a major deal. So people, get it together. What do you guys have to say? If you want to tweet Qué Golazo Pod, do you think that the November international break should happen at all? Should we see crowds in stadiums at all in 2020? Make sure that you tweet at us and give us all your questions and comments. Moving on, people, there was actually some soccer that was also played as well. Let's not forget the international break may be boring to some, exciting to others, but it's always relative. It all depends on what you're looking at. Let's begin in Europe. Let's stay with the Nations League and perhaps some Euro qualifiers. Andrei Shevchenko's Ukraine beat Luis Enrique's Spain 1-0, which is a sentence I thought I would never say, not at least until I realized I was so old. There were other results as well, a boring yet somewhat effective England kind of threw the way. Jimmy, what were some of the takeaways through these Nations League and Euro qualifiers that you can take?
Yeah, I think the one that I want to highlight is Germany. They were down to Switzerland 2-0. They came back and fought a few different times to ultimately even up the game at 3-3, but they haven't been playing particularly well. When you look at their roster in particular, they have the depth. They look very similar to France in so many ways, where they have a couple of guys that could start, third stringers could go on and start and do fine. But for whatever reason, their manager, Yogi Löw, just isn't getting a lot out of these guys. Now he's trying to move on some guys that have been around for a long time, Boateng, Hummels, Thomas Muller. It's not included anymore, when I think he could make a strong argument as to why he should be still in the team, because he's still doing it with Bayern Munich. I don't know what's happening with them. And for me, it just speaks to a bigger conversation and narrative that I'd like to get into it with you guys is how long should a manager be in charge of a national team? For me, going through it with Bruce Arena, when I was, thankfully, he picked me for his second time around when he was coaching the men's national team from the 2002, and then I was part of the 2006 World Cup team. I was fresh with him, so it was fine. I wasn't part of the 2002 cycle, but the guys that had been, you could just tell that they'd heard this voice before. They've been in these pressure situations before with him. Not to say malaise sounds very strong, but it just seems like they relaxed a little bit. They were comfortable. And I feel like a manager shouldn't have a job with the national team for more than 4 years. One World Cup cycle and you're out. Yogi Löw was tremendous. Obviously helped them win in 2014. They were awesome in World Cup qualifying going into 18. I don't even know if they lost the game, and they dominated with their B team in the 2017 Confederations Cup. Everybody's like, Germany's winning the 18 World Cup for sure. And then they get bounced in the group stages, and they really haven't been the same since. Is it a transition because of their old guys that did do the business in 14 and having these young guys come up and the young guys aren't ready? I don't know, but I think it speaks to a little bit of a conversation of maybe they just need to hear a new voice. Yogi Löw's been a part of that for so long. It might just be time for a change. And that's what I kind of took away from that result. And that's not just isolated to them. We see that a lot happen with a lot of different countries around the world.
That's a really good question. Should managers have kind of half a presidency, right? Allowance, right? Just 4 years and that's it. And then you go. Then again, there are examples like Uruguay and Oscar Tavares, who, yes, they didn't have a great round of qualifiers right now, but, they almost surely are a guaranteed spot in the World Cup. You also look at Fernando Santos at Portugal. I mean, they may not play the greatest stuff. It does help that you have Cristiano Ronaldo, but they've been pretty successful in recent years. But then look at England, who pretty much changes managers every time we blink, right? And what have they done since 1966? I mean, Euro 96 was the closest one. What do you think, JJ?
This is a really, really interesting point because it, involves or it concerns so many different national teams that we could talk about just based on recent results. Obviously we can bring England into the discussion with Gareth Southgate. He's coming in for a lot of criticism. Bizarrely, England, managed to beat the top-ranked team in the world, Belgium, but then they go and lose to Denmark at home 1-0. Now they're struggling to be in the top two places in the Nations League group. You've got France, who, they're doing quite well with Portugal at the top of their Nations League group at the moment. But since the World Cup victory, it's there's been a sense of surely there's something more that this France team has to give, given the amount of talent that they have available to them. There's a lot of frustration towards Didier Deschamps and, sort of the lack of experimentation that he has towards teams. And then you look at like an upcoming nation, for example, Norway. They've got so much, good young talent coming through. You've got Haaland, obviously. You've got Ødegaard as well. Yet that generation didn't emerge in time for them to qualify for the Euros. So now you've got to pose the question, should Lagerbäck be moved on and somebody else brought in order to oversee this next generation of players? And, I feel, going back to Jimmy's points about Jogi Löw, when you have success with the national team in such a big competition as the World Cup or the Euros, there's always going to be a temptation from that respective federation to keep that coach on. I mean, basically, unless a coach who's won a tournament like that gets bored, and feels the need to return to club management, it's very unlikely that they're going to walk away from that position. Federations are also in a tight spot because they have to think of the 2-year cycle that it takes for qualifying for these events and then actually getting there. So it is a very... It's a very complicated situation because, I take Jimmy's points and I completely agree. There are quite a few national teams that feel like they go stale after a while. Germany, definitely one of them. And unfortunately, since the takeover of Frank de Boer, things aren't looking too promising for the Netherlands either. So there's a lot of national teams right now who are struggling to sort of find either the right fit with the coach or find a coach that's willing to experiment enough. Because for me, something like the Nations League is perfect for a team like France to completely experiment, go with players who wouldn't normally sort of be, Didier Deschamps' choice players, yet it's basically the same players being selected week in, week out, and I think that will contribute towards, what Jimmy said earlier, them basically being too accustomed to hearing the same voice saying the same things over and over.
Yeah, what I would jump in and say is if the federation and the coach were on the same page, because you make some great points, and there are plenty of examples of long-standing national team managers that have had success and have mentored many generations of players. But if you both came in and said, listen, this is you, that's it. You just get 4 years. I feel like the approach of the manager would be different. The players would approach it different. The federation would approach it. There would be no hard feelings. So if Jogi Löw went on to win the World Cup, like, great, thank you for your 4 years. This is how we do it. We just bring in somebody new. And I think if you lost the emotion of that a little bit, I think it would be easier for everybody to absorb. But then, yeah, you're right. Once they win something, it's harder to get rid of. I mean, Didier Deschamps is a good example. When you're talking about him, he's probably like, dude, I won a World Cup. Get off my back. I can do whatever the hell I want. I'm Didier Deschamps, I've done it as a player. I've done it as a manager. What else do you want from me? So he probably thinks the criticism's unjust a little bit and that he deserves as much rope as he wants because of the success that he's had. And I would be hard to argue with him otherwise. But I think if everybody kind of came into it saying, hey, this is the deal, then it'd be a lot easier to kind of understand the project in a more meaningful way.
Well, everybody, what do you think? Should a manager of a national team have just a maximum of 4 years, no matter what? I'll tell you what I think. Every single international break, get a new person in. Keep rotating. Be beautiful. We'll be back after this. So we're going to say goodbye to JJ soon, and I wanted to just make sure that he fills us in on France. You mentioned the Nations League, such a good opportunity for this ridiculously loaded French squad to just play around, and Deschamps just basically having a vacation and just checking out what talent he has. Talk to us a little bit about France, this international break. How did you see them?
I mean, obviously, it's been a very mixed bag. I mean, you look at the Nations League games, the draw against Portugal, okay, very unimaginative, but, it keeps them sort of in there at the top alongside them, both on 10 points after the win over Croatia. And then the, goals galore in the friendly against Ukraine. We obviously saw that phenomenal acrobatic effort from Eduardo Camavinga. So, there is opportunity for new players to come in and impress every now and then for France. I just find it a little bit frustrating that, guys like Camavinga are only getting given friendly matches at this moment in time or cameo appearances from the bench in the Nations League, when I think, they could be benefiting from being played from the start and stuff like the Nations League, because, let's face it, I mean, okay, he got himself a goal against Croatia and it turned out to be the match winner, but, Kylian Mbappe is not necessarily gaining that much at this moment in time from being involved in pretty much every French match. I mean, he's somehow expected to have played, against Croatia on the Wednesday night. PSG will be in action away at Nîmes in Ligue 1 on the Friday night. I mean, it's almost irresponsible if Thomas Tuchel puts him out on the pitch. Yet PSG, short of creative talent going into that match with Angel Di Maria being suspended. So this brings us back to this conundrum that people are facing with the current situation, fixture lists being so ridiculously overloaded. And it just felt like a breath of fresh air watching France in that friendly against Ukraine, sort of able to take their foot off the clutch a little bit, off the brake, and really sort of go at it. You had the celebrations for Giroud as well. It was lovely to see, and to be perfectly honest with you, it was just so much more enjoyable than the match against Portugal or the match against Croatia. It just feels like there's so much that this French team could do right now, that this generation of talent could do. And we're only sort of seeing part of that being tapped into.
Okay, JJ, I think I speak for the audience that's listening and watching. Camavinga, where's he going? He can't be staying at Rennes for too much longer. Is he going to PSG? Is he going to somewhere else in another country? What's the story? He's way too big. His potential's, I mean, everybody can see it. He's on everybody's radar. Where do you think he'll end up?
That's a really good question. That, like you said, he's on everyone's radar. There's no shortage of clubs who would be interested to take him. But there are not that many clubs out there right now who could pay, what Rennes would be looking for someone like Camavinga. When you consider that the going rate for someone like Camavinga before Rennes qualified for the Champions League group stage, before he was capped at senior level by France, it was already probably around 80 million euros. So if you assume that internationally, and playing in the Champions League is going to add value to that. We're talking about him already passing the 100 million euro price tag mark, not even having hit 20 yet. So there's only a handful of clubs you can really think that could realistically even come into the bidding, at that kind of price. And they're the usual suspects, the likes of Real Madrid, the likes of Barcelona, the likes of Manchester City, and the likes of PSG. But if you look at the way that the recent transfer window has just gone, few of those clubs, if any, are going to be able to stump up that amount for one player. And if they do, it's likely going to mean that they have to move on 1, 2, perhaps even 3 others, to make room for him in the squad. So for me at this moment in time, I think he is at the right place to be this season, considering his talent. I think it's going to be very exciting to see him once the Champions League gets going, and Rennes as well making their debut. But looking further ahead, I think that you'd have to consider a club like Real Madrid, who have had their names in there since the very beginning, to sort of have a bit of a lead on most other people. But then again, as we saw with Marco Verratti years ago, when the Emir of Qatar decides he wants you to play for his club, the likelihood is you're probably going to receive a very attractive offer at some point. So it could be that PSG are planning to spend big on him once they're able to again. But while coronavirus is affecting football in the way that it is, it's going to keep some big players out of the market, so that it is a potential opportunity for someone to steal a march and pick up arguably the biggest talent on the market right now.
I got one for you, JJ. Jack Grealish on one side, Trezeguet on the other one. Camavinga right behind Ollie Watkins. We just do 150 pay installments and bang, that's it. Villa win the league, right?
Who wouldn't want to join Villa right now? I mean, it's happy days at Villa Park. I think Camavinga would be delighted to pen a 5-year contract. That's
why you got that project big picture in the Premier League, because Liverpool got scared. They lost 3-7-2, right? Yeah, let's focus on PSG, JJ. You said that Friday, they're playing Friday, right? That's just ridiculous. To your point about that Kylian Mbappe was even featured, not just him, but just, any player that has to feature that short. What are we looking at in this PSG game? What's the preview like?
I mean, interestingly, this is going to be one of the French games that's able to have fans in the stadium before, the new lockdown measures come into effect. There should be around 5,000 people at the stadium. And PSG, they've picked up form recently. They had a very slow start to the campaign, lost the 2 opening matches. Now they're on a run of 4 consecutive wins. Thumped Angers just before the international break came in. Neymar was looking superb in that match. You had Florenzi getting his first goal for PSG. Mbappe as well was particularly key. But PSG coming into this one with, at least one eye on the Champions League starting next week against Manchester United. No Di Maria, he's suspended, so he'll be well rested before that United clash. Obviously, no international duty for him either, so PSG have no worries there that he'll be fresh. But everybody else, there's big concerns. A few new signings as well, who Thomas Tuchel is going to have to try to bed in and work out if they can play some part against United. Moise Kean, Danilo Pereira, Rafinha all arrived on deadline day. Exciting when you have that many new faces coming into the squad, but it's also difficult to try and get them to gel when there's an international break that immediately follows the transfer window. So, lots to watch out for here for PSG. And, it's quite a dangerous time for them to be playing Nîmes, because Nîmes managed to get a win away at their bitter rivals Montpellier for the first time in absolutely ages. And that is going to have them feeling really confident coming into this one. And everybody looks forward to hosting PSG, particularly in the week before Champions League fixtures, because it's an opportunity for some of Ligue 1's smaller clubs to take a nibble at PSG.
I know you have one last comment about Ligue 1 and their TV rights. What's the latest there?
Yes, it's a very, very messy situation. So basically, Ligue 1 is benefiting now from a massive new bumper TV deal, which pushes it up sort of on par with the rest of Europe's leading leagues. We're talking about sort of 800 million euros per season. And already the TV rights holders, Media Pro, Spain-based but Chinese-owned, they're already struggling to make the payments. One payment deadline has already been missed at the beginning of October, and there's now revelations coming out each day about how Media Pro have misjudged the amount of people that would subscribe to be watching Ligue 1 TV. And it's getting very, very messy, and it's obviously very, very worrying for French football. There was already plenty of furore that surrounded the situation when Canal Plus ended their deal prematurely. beIN Sports are the other broadcaster of the league, so they were sort of left carrying the can by Canal. So, it's very, very unclear at this moment in time, the economic situation for all of the French clubs with regards to the TV rights. Are Media Pro going to continue? Is the bidding process going to go to tender again, and other people can offer to take it off their hands? Meanwhile, you've got clubs who will have probably based their future budgets on all of this money coming in. Will be paying their players salaries according to the money that they were expecting to get for the TV rights. So with times already quite tough for French clubs, they even had to have their own intra-France transfer window earlier this summer to guarantee that some of the smaller clubs with lesser budgets could actually do some business before the other European clubs got involved. It feels quite bleak right now for French football, and with the prospect of fewer, if any, fans being in stadiums for the foreseeable future, there are going to be some clubs facing critical moments, and we could perhaps even see some going to the wall, as we've unfortunately started to see in the UK.
This whole league will be PSG League 1, I think, by the end of the decade, maybe. Just put the whole thing on YouTube. I think that will probably help. Thanks. Jonathan Johnson, Paris-based insider, CBS. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you soon, my friend.
Guys, it's been an absolute pleasure. Looking forward to the next one.
Welcome back, everybody. To wrap things up, we're going to talk about South American World Cup qualifiers. But first, hot off the press, unbelievable, Jimmy. Talk to us about a certain American star who's found a new home.
Freddy Adu.
What?
He's alive, Luis. He is. They found him in Sweden, the third division team. He just signed. And actually, I'm thinking maybe he'll finally realize his potential. He's going to help us win the World Cup in 2022, Luis. He's going to make it all. He's going to cram all of his potential into 18 months and help us win the World Cup finally and realize all that talent that we could argue that he wasted over so many different years. I'm excited for him. I don't know. I feel like this is his 16th club in 17 years or whatever since he turned 14 and was doing commercials with Pelé. I don't know. It's interesting. Can I share a Freddy Adu story with you?
Please.
Is that okay? Okay.
Please.
So 2006, the January camp. Okay, all the guys get called in. The European-based guys obviously stay in Europe, but all the domestic guys get called in. It's a big camp, especially for us on the bubble. I was on the bubble to make the World Cup roster in 2006. We're 6 months away, 5 months away, 4 months away actually from getting the final roster named. So it's a big camp for a lot of guys. Freddy Adu, who really hadn't been a part of the picture in 2005, gets an invite. And so he must be buzzing. I know he's buzzing. He probably thinks, oh, I made the team. I'm Freddy Adu. I can do whatever I want, whatever. It's fine. He's a good player. He's got the talent, no doubt. But we're doing this running drill. Okay. And this is when I knew that he would never be a top player. All right. That's my preface for you. But we're doing this running drill. We got to run as far as we can in 20 minutes. They set up this whole little thing. There's some hills that we could run to in between the fields. And it's hard, because you're not just competing just to see where you can on a personal best. You're also competing with other guys that are on the bubble too. And it's like, do you start fast? Do you go slow and build up? It's a mind trip, right? I end up getting 5th because Landon Donovan's a goddamn gazelle, and Frankie Hayter drinks 18 coffees. How can you compete with that much caffeine? So I end up settling in 5th. I'll take it because there's 30 guys there or whatever. Freddy Adu. Okay, we had 2 assistant coaches, Mooch Meyernick, rest in peace, and Kurt Anolfo. They were just jogging. Our 2 assistant coaches who were, mid-50s and like late 40s or whatever, jogging. Freddy Adu in this running thing is behind them. Dude is behind them. Dude, he's on the bubble to go to the World. I was like, that's it. I'm done. I'm off the Freddy Adu hype train. Like, I always wanted to believe in Freddy. I wanted to believe in what he was capable of. I played against him enough to see his talent firsthand. Really talented. But when I saw that, I was like, I can't subscribe to the guy anymore. I can't hit like. I can't rate and review him anymore. I'm out on Freddy Adu. So yes, it's a sad story. Yes, I'm sure there's a lot behind it, and everything that happened in his buildup and his development and his maturity and evolution and all that. I am happy that he's alive and doing well and continuing to play the beautiful game, but I was out on Freddy Adu about 14 years ago.
But like, when you're talking jogging, like, it's like what
Dude,
speed are we talking here?
We're talking like we call it the survival shuffle, where you're like barely moving. When you do a sprint and you're like sprinting as hard as you can, and you want to tell yourself, just don't stop moving when I stop.
Yeah.
That's what he was like. That was his speed. Dude, he's behind our 2 assistant coaches who are out of shape, dude. Like, no, I can't buy into that. And that's when I was like, I don't want this guy on my team and small-sided. Like, I'm trying to make the team, and I don't want a guy that's dogging it to be on my team. And it's just a sad state of affairs because he could have really helped us in a lot of different ways. He got so many chances to make it as well, and he just could never click on and push. You know, he could never really push himself to try to get better and to maybe look weak and to maybe say, hey, I'm not good enough. You know, I don't think he ever really addressed that. Maybe he has now over the years, but I don't know, man. It's a sad story.
It is, but as you mentioned, he now has signed with Sweden's Österlen, and it's his first destination as a player in 2 years. So, you know, we'll see what happens. Our friend Grant Wool with Blue Wire Pods has a great story about him. So maybe we'll listen to that one. But what a story. What a story. And I can't wait to jog with you because I want to sprint all the way.
Those days are long gone, Luis, but I appreciate it.
Nah, you look in good shape, my friend. Absolutely. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about the World Cup qualifiers in South America. Arguably, forget arguably, the best games when it comes to the international break. I don't care what anybody says. All right. Geography situation, when you think about the altitude of La Paz or the heat of Barranquilla or, you know, Venezuela as well. And just the fact that you have this just tumultuous relationship among so many countries, Argentina, Brazil, of course, Peru, Chile. There's just so many storylines. Then you mix in just the craziness of refereeing, which we saw very well this week. It was just crazy, Jimmy. A lot of craziness. Neymar and Brazil beat Peru yesterday 4-2. The Chilean referee gave a horrific decision to make it 3-2, and after that the game was over. But Neymar did surpass the great Il Fenomeno Ronaldo to make it 64 goals and second behind Pele's 77. Argentina did well, beating Bolivia in the altitude. You saw Messi sprinting in the 82nd minute. Talk about, you know, we're talking about jogging and sprinting. Imagine that at 3,500 meters above water. Uruguay lost to Ecuador in Quito, and Ecuador is always a shocking team. They have so much youth and talent, but sometimes they don't deliver halfway through, you know, the marathon campaign that is the World Cup qualifiers. But, you know, they beat Uruguay, so Tavares has a lot to think about. Chile also, you know, got a point just like Peru as well. Venezuela and Bolivia, unfortunately, not well. But Brazil and Argentina remain the top two without losing a game, and Colombia 4 points out of 6 is pretty good. Any takeaways from the World Cup qualifiers? Any thoughts? What do you think?
Oh, I've got a lot of thoughts. First and foremost, I want to say that I love this format for World Cup qualifying. It's all the teams in the continent. Everybody plays home and away, and the top 4 make the World Cup. You know, let's go. Let's party. I like that. I like that it's that simple and that straightforward. I know it's a little bit more complicated, more countries in Europe and Africa, and the U.S. has a lot of smaller nations that, well, you know, they have to get a fair shake too. But I love the simplicity of it. And I love the fact that the referees swallow their whistles anytime that they can throughout this competition. I saw some tackles that an Peruvian defender absolutely smashed Miguel Almiron, Paraguayan.
Carlos Zambrano. He got sent off yesterday too.
Well,
so
he should have got sent off the game against Paraguay because
he should have. Yes, he should.
That was a nasty one, but the referee didn't even call it. So you got to respect that. So there's a lot that goes down to it. Obviously, a lot of long-term rivalries and history between the countries, both on and off the field. For me, one of the biggest takeaways was Argentina, who before their game in Bolivia and La Paz were complaining about how they never win there. They're whining about the altitude, all this stuff. And they go down a goal and they come back and fight. That's not an Argentina that I recognize, frankly, over the last 5-6 years. If they went down, you never really saw that. You never really saw them have that spirit. Now, I guess it happened in the World Cup a little bit, but it just was so inconsistent. And now what I think is even more important than that, them coming back, which I think helps the mentality, is that Lautaro Martinez scored. It's really important that they have another player on their team that's not named Messi to step up. They have the players. Obviously, Higuain was the kind of guy for a while, Aguero, but they never really did it consistently or when it mattered, right, in 3 straight finals. So I think if Lautaro Martinez can really take some more responsibility, that's going to be a very big deal. So I'm excited to see how that continues to play out with Argentina moving forward. I'm sure Messi appreciates that, having to be the guy that puts the team on his shoulders all the time. And then if I pivot to Brazil, Neymar, he's just a special player. And I have it written on my board behind me. Will Neymar become the best Brazilian of all time? Obviously, scoring that many goals for that country in particular is incredible, passing R9. Now, I got to play against R9, so I'm a little biased because I think he's one of the best of all time. I would even actually argue that Ronaldinho is better than Neymar. I think Neymar is right behind him, but Ronaldinho at his peak was untouchable. And then, of course, you have Pelé and so many other players in Brazil that we could name. So I don't know if he will go down, but I wanted to pose that question to you. Where does he fit? Because I think he's only 29. He's going to catch Pelé. He's going to be the leading scorer in Brazilian history. And so where do you put him into that conversation? Because I think there's a lot of people, especially the ones that saw the old Brazilian teams that won all the World Cups back in the day. He wouldn't even crack the top 5, Neymar, you know?
Yeah, no, it's a very good argument. And listen, I think that Neymar's, resume is also relative to his reputation outside of the pitch as well. And I think that no matter what he does, there's going to be criticism in one way or another. I think it's a different situation when you compare. I think it's going to be almost similar, the argument to when they try and give it to Messi. I think that Neymar needs a World Cup in order for people to truly get him. There is no shortage of appraisal when it comes to the fact that he just passed my favorite Brazilian player, Ronaldo, along with Romario. Like, passing that is amazing. I'm with you. I think Ronaldinho is better. And, to get behind and try and chase up to Pele will be quite a thing. But Neymar needs a World Cup. Neymar needs a World Cup. He wasn't even part of the squad last summer when Brazil Copa America because of the injury. Obviously, that wasn't his fault. But we need to see more of that. Also, the ultimate target for PSG with him was to win the Champions League. That hasn't happened yet. There is no denying his talents. And to me, I'm a nostalgic person. I go back and see Neymar when he played with Santos. And the things that he would do on the pitch is just ridiculous. And it's just beautiful to see. So sometimes you have to think about the overall trajectory of the player. But, Brazil in general, to me, are going to top this group. Coach Tite has just a squad that's experience mixed with youth. I mean, we've talked about Neymar, but what about Roberto Firmino? Felipe Coutinho always ups his levels. Douglas Luiz from Aston Villa had a really good game. Everton Cebolinha is just a star. Somebody that's playing for Benfica right now, recently signed. He's going to be amazing. Gabriel Jesus, is not even mentioned right now as I'm talking. They have 2 world-class goalkeepers in Alisson and Ederson, and Weverton was the one that was starting yesterday. So they just have such a squad. But the question will be, as it is to all these South American nations, can they finally reach the levels of recent European teams and win the World Cup? Because we haven't seen that in recent years. And Brazil is one of them. They haven't won the World Cup since 2002. So it's been a while. I still see Brazil as number 1. I think Neymar is a top 5 Brazilian player, but he's not better than Ronaldinho. He's not better than Ronaldo. He's not better than Romario, I think. But what do you think? Where does Neymar stand? I know that we got a lot of Neymar stands and a lot of Neymar haters. I'd love to hear the comments, right?
No, it would be great. I mean, for me, I think you put the tweet out, the one that I read about how Neymar didn't end up completing this goal, but he dribbled through like 5 guys and did something so beautiful. It's something that no other player would risk. And I think that needs to be taken into consideration. Also, the fact that in some weird way, Ronaldinho is oddly celebrated for his off the field antics, but yet Neymar is persecuted for the same types of things. And we could argue Ronaldinho was actually doing worse stuff, well, it depends on how you define worse stuff, but they both have these kind of off the field personas. And it seems like Neymar's is more shown in a bad light. And Ronaldinho's like, he's a party guy. That's what makes him special, and he seems to get that free pass, even though if he spent time in jail recently, probably doing some stuff. Bigger conversation. But I would say that it's interesting because Neymar is a special player and there is he gets a lot of heat and I don't think it's necessarily fair. And he handles it, I think, pretty well, all things considered. I don't know if I can handle that heat on a consistent basis. Now, of course, he brings some of it upon himself, given his diving antics, which people don't like. I think diving's part of the game. I don't know how far you want to go down that rabbit hole. He might take it a little bit too far, but he is a special player. And I think that speaks to your point that he's doing things that other players aren't even trying. And that needs to not be diminished in any way. That should be celebrated. That's what makes him him. And to take that away from him, he wouldn't want to play anymore. And I think we miss a little bit of that creativity in the game. And so I'm not necessarily like 100% Neymar stan, but I would like to say that he has something that a lot of players don't. And that should make him or warrant conversation as one of the top 5 Brazilians of all time.
Yeah, it should be celebrated. I completely agree, which is why I go back to the Santos Neymar. My only argument to your Ronaldinho comparison is that most of the time Ronaldinho would finish off what he just did. Sometimes Neymar doesn't do it, but
fair point.
There's no denying Neymar's talents and abilities. What do you think? Anyway, that's all the time we had. Jimmy, thank you so much for joining us. Jimmy will be a regular of Qué Golazo podcast. You can see and hear more from him on Twitter, social, and of course, our CBS squad. Jimmy, you the man.
Yeah, thanks, Luis. That was a lot of fun.
I want to thank Jimmy Conrad and Jonathan Johnson for joining us today. Tomorrow, we return with our weekend preview. We're going to cover a lot. So make sure that you follow us and stay tuned. We'll see you next time.